I'm Joseph.
Hi, I'm Christine.
And this is Love Be Talk. And if you're new to podcasting, you're in the right place.
Before we begin, let me introduce to you our lovely guests, Krisha and Kim and Mark.
The myth of Eros and Psyche is probably one of the best classical stories in mythology.
I agree to you, partner.
It's an interesting story.
What story are you talking about?
You don't heard about this story?
No.
Me as well. I don't know that story. It's a beautiful story. Can you tell us about the story?
We're excited to know more about the love story of Eros and Psyche.
Me too, Mama.
It's my pleasure to tell you. Once upon a time, there was a king who had three wonderful daughters. The youngest, Psyche, was much more beautiful than her two sisters and looked like a goddess among mere mortals. The fame of its beauty had been spread throughout the whole kingdom, and men kept coming to her palace to admire and worship her.
The two sisters were beautiful, but Psyche was certainly the most beautiful. So beautiful that she attracted everyone's eyes, making her sisters jealous. Faraway kingdoms traveled long distances just to gaze at the famous princess.
When people would see her, they used to say that even Aphrodite herself could compete Psyche. The more people were getting to know Psyche, the less would remember the goddess of love and beauty.
The temples of Aphrodite were abandoned, her altars covered with cold ashes, and sculptures would no more make statues for her. All the honors reserved to her were then attributed to a simple mortal girl.
The goddess could not accept such a situation and required help from his son, Eros. He told him, in distress, use your power and make this little shameless girl to fall in love with the vilest and the most despicable creature who has ever walked on earth.
That's too mean. Yeah, I feel bad for Psyche if Eros would follow her mother's order.
Eros agreed to do so, but the moment he saw her, he himself felt his heart pierced by one of his own arrows. He couldn't make the charming maiden fall in love with the horrible creature, but also decided not to tell his mother.
That's good to hear that Eros don't do what his mother ordered him to do.
Psyche, however, was feeling bad because not only she could not fall in love with someone, but even more surprising, nobody seemed to really fall in love with her. Men were happy just to admire her, then they passed by I passed by and married another girl.
Boys as always.
Not all men are like that.
Her two sisters, though definitely less seductive, had held two lavish weddings, each with a king. Psyche was the most beautiful girl on earth, admired but never really loved. It seemed that no man would want her as his wife, and this caused great anxiety and distress to her parents.
Poor Psyche.
That is when her father went to visit the oracle of Delphi to ask Apollo for an advice on what to do to find a husband for Psyche. The prophecy of the god was terrible. Apollo decreed that Psyche, dressed in black dress, should be brought to the summit of a mountain and stay there alone. The husband that was assigned to her, a winged serpent, terrible and more powerful than the gods themselves, would come up and take her for his wife.
No one can imagine the despair of the family and friends of Psyche. She was prepared for the hill as if she were to face her death, and with more price than if they were to drive her to the town. They lead the young lady to the hill. Desperately, they all departed, leaving Psyche to her fate, radiant and helpless, and they locked themselves in the palace to mourn her for the rest of their days.
I feel bad for Psyche for that situation. On the hill and in the dark, Psyche remained seated and waited. While she was shrieking and crying in the quiet night, a slight breeze reached her. It was the fresh wind of Zephyr, the mildest of the winds. He felt that she was being raised, she was being taken into the air. Over the rocky hill, to a soft meadow full of flowers, he did his best to make her forget her pain and put her to sleep.
She then woke up by the sounds of fair stream, and when she opened her eyes, she faced an imposing and magnificent castle. It seems destined to a god with gold columns, silvers, walls, and floors of inlaid precious stones. Absolute silence ruled. It seems uninhabited, and Psyche approached cautiously to admire its splendors. She remained suspicious at the tree's holds, where she heard a noise but could not see anyone. However, she could clearly hear the words, "The house is for you. Come in and do not be afraid. Take a bath and we will immediately honor you with a great meal."
Never had she taken such a refreshing bath nor tasted such a delicious dishes. While eating, she heard the soft music around her like a harp accompanying a numerous choir. She heard it, but she could not see it. The whole day she was alone, only accompanied by the voices, but somehow she knew her husband would come at night, and so it was when she felt he was close to her and heard his voice whispering sweetly in her ear. Her fears disappeared without even seeing him. She was certain that he was not a monster but the loving husband she had always been wishing for.
Aww.
So lovely of them.
It gave me courage to pursue my loved ones.
The following days passed in full of joy, and Psyche could not remember any happier time of her life. However, day after day she was feeling sadness that she could not see her husband. Moreover, she was left alone all day and boredom filled her heart. Suddenly, she started missing her family. They must have been mourning for her and she was alive and happy. This was not fair and she didn't want her family to suffer. That night, she asked her mysterious husband to grant her a favor. She wanted her two sisters to come up at the place and make sure that she was fine. At first, her husband refused, but when Psyche turned out to be too sad, he told her, "Okay, I will allow your two sisters to come up here, but I am warning you, do not let them influence you. If they do, you will destroy our relationship and suffer a lot."
Next day, her two sisters carried by the wind, they came up to Psyche. They were all happy to see each other and cried in happiness. However, when they entered the palace, the two older sisters were amazed by all those magnificent treasures. During dinner, they heard a wonderful music and drank the most delicious wines. Envy was flourishing in their hearts and an irresistible curiosity to know the owner of such magnificence. The husband of Psyche, they kept asking the poor girl questions on her husband. His look and his occupation, Psyche just said that he was a young hunter.
But they didn't believe her, of course. Could a simple hunter to be so rich? He must be a prince or even a good, they thought. The two sisters now that compared to Psyche, their own wealth and happiness were nothing at all and in total jealousy. They made a plan to hurt their sisters.
When they're saying goodbye, the two evil women told Psyche that her husband must be an awful snake that the oracle of Delphi had told her husband. That is why he doesn't allow you to see him, because he knows that if you see him, you will disgust in his sight and leave him forever. Oh, poor Psyche, how can you sleep with such a horrible creature?
From day on, Psyche could think of nothing else but these words. Her sister must be right. Why doesn't he come today? Why doesn't he allow me to see him? What is his secret? Why wasn't he ever told about his life? This thought were puzzling Psyche for many days now. He must be hiding something horrible and that is why he does not want to be seen anymore. I must find out. Tonight when he falls to deep sleep, I will light a candle to see him. If he is a snake, I will kill him. Otherwise, I will burn the candle up and go happily to sleep. He had taken to her decisions, forgetting all about her husband.
Indeed, that night, when her husband fell asleep peacefully, she took courage and lit the candle. Walking on her toes, she approached the bed and she felt a deep relief. The light did not show a monster, but the most beautiful of men. Ashamed by her madness and her little confidence, Psyche fell down on her knees and thanked God for this happiness. But while he was leaning on him, a drop of oil fell from the candle on the back of the handsome young man. He woke up in pain and saw the light. He looked her in the eyes and, facing Psyche's distrust, he left their bedroom without uttering a single word. Psyche immediately ran after her husband. It was dark and could not see him, but could hear his heartbroken voice. Love cannot live without trust. Those were his last words before flying to the dark sky. The God of love, she thought, he was my husband and I did not trust him. She cried and cried for days and then she decided to do anything to gain her back. She would look everywhere for him and she would prove her love. Without knowing what else to do, she went to the temple of Aphrodite and prayed to the goddess. She asked Aphrodite to speak to her son and persuade him to get Psyche back.
Aphrodite had not, of course, overcome her jealousy for Psyche and still wanted her revenge. She told the young girl that she needed to be completely sure that Psyche was the appropriate wife for her son. Therefore, Psyche should accomplish 3 tasks to prove her skills. If she failed in even one of these tasks, Eros would be lost forever. Psyche agreed and Aphrodite led her on a hill. There, the goddess showed her to her a dot of different small seeds of wheat, poppies, millets, and many others. I want you to separate these seeds by this afternoon. If you do not, I will never let you see Eros again, said Aphrodite and laughed.
How can you see do that? How can you see separate all these tiny seeds?
This was a scroll test that filled her eyes with tears. The moment a row of ants were passing by and saw her in despair. Come, feel mercy for this poor girl and let us help her, they said to each other. They all responded to his appeal and worked hard separating the seeds, something in which they were experts from the big original dawn. They formed several smaller dawns, each with one king of seed. The smaller dawns saw Aphrodite and Queen Anne.
You have not finished your work, she said, and ordered Psyche to sleep on the ground. Without giving her any food, while she leaned in her soft bed, she thought that if she could compel Psyche to hard work for a long time, her beauty would not resist. Meanwhile, Aphrodite would not let her son to leave his room, where he was all the time mourning for Psyche's betrayal.
Next morning, Aphrodite came up with a new job from Psyche, a dangerous task. Can you see those black waters descending from the hill? That river, awful and abhorrent, filled this battle with its water. The goddess said, on reaching the waterfall, Psyche realized that the surrounding rocks were slippery and the waters rushed through such abrupt rocks and that only a winged creature could approach.
And ended. An eagle helped her. It was flying with its huge wings above the river when it saw Psyche and felt sympathy for her. It seized the bottle from her hands with its beak, filled it with some black waters and gave it back to Psyche. Venus accepted her with a good smile. Someone help you, she said sharply. Otherwise, you would not have been able to perform this task by your own. I'm going to give you another chance to prove that you are as determined as you claim to be. She gave a box to Psyche. She had to take it to the underworld and ask Persephone, Queen of the Dead, to drain a little of her beauty into box. Obedient as Oswald, Psyche took the path leading to Hades. When she entered the gates and took the boat to the other bank, where the dead people used to live, she gave much money to Charity, the boatman, to help her find her way in the dark to the palace of Persephone.
Indeed, the boatman helped her, and after a while, she was right in front of Persephone. When she asked her to drop a drink of her beauty in the box, Persephone was glad to serve Aphrodite. Psyche took the box and returned cheerful to the earth. When she gave Aphrodite the box, the goddess got extremely angry. She yelled at the poor girl that she would never let her go and she would always be her servant. At this crucial moment, the gods who were watching this wrongdoing all this time decided to take up action. They sent Hermes, the messenger god, to narrate Eros all the misfortunes that his wife was going through. Eros was touched and this healed with the wound of betrayal.
It's fine, yeah. It's okay. It's okay.
Eros was touched and this healed with wound of betrayal. He left his room and found Psyche exhausted in this mother's burden.
I can't do it anymore. It's so funny. From that moment, Eros and Psyche lived happily together in their lovely palace, which was always full of roses and other flowers. Psyche persuaded Eros to forgive his mother for what she had made her suffer. As a wedding gift, Zeus made Psyche immortal and allowed her to taste ambrosia, the drink of the gods. Even Aphrodite was happy because now that Psyche was living in the sky with her husband, men on the earth had forgotten all about her and were worshipping the true goddess of beauty, and that's me.
I thought it was Aphrodite.
Just kidding.
I love to be in love.
Oh, it's great.
I'm jealous of Psyche because he found this true love and the true love.
You're gonna find your true love soon.
It was really a good love story after all.
It's good to hear that you love our story with you.
And here we end our podcast. Thank you guys for visiting our podcast.
And that's it for today's episode of Love Be Talk.